How the madness began. When I arrived in prison, I became a member of the Legal Club, which was a group of inmates who dedicated themselves to the study of the law in order to obtain their freedom from the courts. I discovered that there was an incredible number of sex offenders whose charges arose as a result of a divorce. Being a member of the Legal Club gave me an opportunity to read the paperwork from their trials, and it was from this exposure that I was able to determine that most of these charges were false. After my second trial, where I was found not guilty on 14 of 15 counts, I was sentenced to 10 years probation and court-ordered to return to work or go back to school. Realizing that because of these charges I would never work as an aircraft mechanic for the airlines again, and that I could not handle the rejection from the employment process that I was certain I would experience, I decided that I would return to school. Upon my departure, the Legal Club asked for my assistance from the outside, and I realized I could best serve them by studying to become a paralegal. I realized that my paralegal program would gain me access to a legal search engine for case law known as LexisNexis, which would prove beneficial to the members of the Legal Club who had no access to case law. One of the things that was immediately apparent was that there was a need for an index of cases involving various sex offenses, so I used LexisNexis to create one. I began searching for cases using terms that were offense-specific, such as rape, molestation, and incest, etc. When I did this, a curious thing presented itself. In spite of the fact that I had narrowed my search criteria to criminal cases, civil suits involving insurance companies appeared in my search results. I had no explanation for why this was occurring, because I realized that it is impossible to obtain insurance for sexual assault of any kind. The following is an example of some of the cases that I found. It should be noted that the above referenced cases came up in a search for criminal cases in citation mode on LexisNexis, where 50 cases at a time are displayed, thus making these insurance cases representative of 6% of all the cases listed. It should also be noted that these are only the cases that went to trial. Cases that settle out of court will not show up in a case law search. It wasn't until about a year later, when I was speaking with the parent of another incarcerated sex offender, that I discovered the reason why this was happening. It would appear that it is common knowledge to some that all you have to do is falsely accuse someone of sexual assault, testify against them in criminal court, and afterward file a claim with your homeowner's insurance company using the criminal conviction as the basis for your claim. When the insurance company refuses to pay, you simply sue them in civil court, and in most instances, the insurance company will pay out to avoid going to trial. Do this, and you too can have a sex palace. That's what this false accuser calls his home. A Mitsubishi Eclipse and a Cadillac Escalade, just like the ones pictured here. This is just one of the many reasons that I have discovered over the years for false accusations, and I have come to learn that there are several more. Other than the fraudulent pursuit of monetary gain, the largest contributor to false charges is revenge. Prosecutors have learned that trying a sex offense case is essentially like shooting fish in a barrel, because 90% of all criminal convictions come from negotiated pleas. With sex offense cases, that percentage is a little higher due to the fact that most charges result in what amounts to a life sentence in prison if you lose in trial. This means that at least 10% of the cases involving sex offender charges actually go to trial, and all but a few of them result in conviction. What this means is that if you are looking for revenge against someone, one of the best ways to accomplish your goals is to accuse someone of a sex offense, because the outcome is almost a certainty. From the court paperwork that I have read from the members of the legal club, I can attest that this is indeed a fact, because in almost every instance the motive of revenge was plainly visible and the jury chose to ignore it. It was during the 80s that the McMartin preschool trial hit the scene, where the owners of a preschool were falsely accused of molesting children in their care. This case shattered the myth that children are incapable of lying. As a result of this trial, and the revelation that the methods employed by psychologists and social workers in gathering testimonial evidence to be used at trial had failed in detecting the truth, a re-evaluation of child investigative interviews was conducted. In 1998, psychologists Deborah A. Poole and Michael E. Lamb wrote a book entitled Investigative Interviews of Children, and it is from this book that I will present some of their findings that should help to explain this. It should be noted that these findings come from investigators in the field, the soldiers in the trenches, so to speak, and what they are writing about comes from observations of the work that they do every day. Although recognition of child abuse has increased dramatically since 1960, there is little evidence that children are at greater risk today than they were during earlier historical periods. Economic and physical hardship have always been associated with declines in the quality of care offered to children. According to Kessin, 1965, however, attitudes toward children have changed dramatically since the 17th century for three major reasons: improved medical care, the Industrial Revolution, and Darwin's theory of evolution. The National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect compiles data on child abuse and neglect referrals and their disposition following investigation. In the 1993 summary reproduced in Figure 1.1, shows a steady increase in referrals between 1976 and 1992, with the 1992 and 1993 figures at 43 reports per 1,000 U.S. children under the age of 18. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 1995. Stated differently, 2.9 million reports of maltreatment in 1993 prompted approximately 1.6 million investigations, most of which were conducted without adequate resources to respond effectively. For example, although the number of reports grew tremendously between 1985 and 1991, 35 states held funding steady or reduced support for Child Protective Services during this period. Pence and Wilson, 1994.